Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. I tell you, every day we're fighting a winnable war. Here is proof from the state of Maryland. Piece from lifenews.com. Brian Fisher is my name. Focal Point the program. AFR Talk is the network, the American Family Radio Talk Network. This is from lifenews.com. The Maryland Department of Health and Hygiene has suspended the licenses of 3 surgical abortion clinics who are all affiliated with one embattled abortion business owner. Inspections of the abortion clinics revealed that they were continuing, to violate state health and safety laws after the initial violations that prompted the state investigations in the first place. So their licenses have been pulled. 3 Maryland abortion clinics now on the path toward closure. That is a winnable war moment for today, because these are slaughterhouses, ladies and gentlemen. These are abattoirs. These are, every one of these is like a mini concentration camp. It's like a mini gas chamber. It's like a mini Birkenau or a mini Auschwitz. And so every time one of those closes down, that is reason for celebration. Now, I want to talk a little bit today. This is stuff that you've heard me say before, but I want to kind of bring some of my thoughts together in a concentrated fashion about Bill Clinton, especially coming out with his statement on Friday that he had now decided that DOMA, the act that he had signed himself in 1996, was suddenly and mysteriously unconstitutional. Now, Bill, the Constitution has not changed in the last 17 years. It has not been amended. It has not been tampered with in the last 17 years. The Constitution is exactly the same, word for word, as it was in 1996 on the day that you signed it. So that bill, DOMA, is as constitutional today as it was then, because nothing has changed except the rotting away, the deterioration, the decay of America's value system. The Constitution hasn't changed. That was constitutional in 1996, and it is constitutional today. And I want to make the point, because we're going to hear a lot about this as we get up to the Supreme Court hearing the appeal on Proposition 8 in California. That's California's marriage amendment that defined marriage in the California state constitution as the union of one man and one woman. This is 7 million Californians went to the ballot box to declare that this was their intention, that protection for natural marriage be elevated to the state constitution. Now, if the Supreme Court overturns that, we'll talk more about Prop 8 in days to come, but if the Supreme Court overturns that, it just completely guts, it eviscerates the concept that power in America belongs to the people. I mean, the power to amend your own federal constitution or your state constitution requires enormous effort. Now, in a lot of states, it's not true in California, but in a lot of states, if you're going to amend your state constitution, as we did in Idaho when I was there with the Idaho Values Alliance, we had to get that through the legislature. It had to pass by a 2/3 vote in the House and in the Senate. And then when it went to the people, it had to pass with a majority. So it was a considerable amount of work you had to go through, because if you're going to amend the Constitution, you want to be sure that this represents the will of the people. The bar ought to be high, and the bar was high in California. They had to go out and get a whole boatload of signatures. Then when that thing was on the ballot, then they had to run the campaign to convince people to turn out to vote their values, and they did. So if the Supreme Court sets aside Prop 8, they have just disenfranchised 7 million Californians, disenfranchised, take the vote away from them, told them it doesn't matter to us. The democratic process, Republican form of government, it does not matter to us. We are tyrants in black robes. You are peons. You are peasants. You are ants. We are kings. We are emperors. We are tyrants. If we want your opinion, we will give it to you. It's that bad if that's what happens. And it's probably all going to come down to Anthony Kennedy. But here's the point I want to make. I've made it before, and I want to make it again. You know, the whole basis for the overturning of Prop 8, the whole basis for overturning DOMA is equality. We need to have marriage equality. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is plain, it is simple, and it is unmistakable. Homosexuals already have full marriage equality in all 50 states. Right now, as you and I are speaking, homosexuals have full marriage equality everywhere in the United States of America. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is denying homosexuals their right to marry anywhere, in any jurisdiction, because homosexuals can get married everywhere just like everybody else to one adult, non-relative member of the opposite sex. They had that right yesterday, they have it today, and they will have it tomorrow. That is full, absolute equality under the law. But the reality is homosexuals do not want equal rights because they already have that. No, they want special rights, rights that are based exclusively on aberrant sexual behavior. They are, in fact, pressing for inequality under the law since they demand a special carve-out for themselves that is not available to pedophiles and polygamists. Pedophiles would like to marry children. They can't. There's no carve-out for them. There's no special right for pedophiles to marry children. You can get that in an Islamic country, but you can't get that in the United States of America. There is no carve-out for polygamists to marry more than one person at a time. So what homosexual activists are pressing for is not equality under the law. It is inequality under the law. They want special carve-outs for them that are not available to other people who likewise engage in sexually abnormal behavior. Now realize that marriage has never been an unrestricted right in America. Never. You cannot marry a child. You can't marry one of your own children. You cannot marry your mother. You can't marry your sister. You can't marry more than one person at a time. You can ask the 19th century Mormons all about that. They couldn't even get in the Union. They couldn't bring Utah into the Union until they renounced the institution of polygamy. You can't do that in America. You can't marry more than one person at a time. You can't marry your goat, even though people are pressing for that. We've talked about that. You can't marry a building. Brought you the story a couple of years ago about a woman in Seattle actually performed a wedding ceremony, got married to her apartment building, and she was serious about that. Now, there's no constitutional right. Here's what I want to emphasize. There is no constitutional right. No matter what you hear, don't let people lie to you. Don't let them deceive you. Don't let them fool you. There is no constitutional right to sodomy-based marriage for the simple reason that there is no constitutional right to engage in sodomy. Now, as Antonin Scalia has frequently said, and he used the word sodomy, it's a perfectly good legal word. It's an ugly word, but it's an ugly word for a reason. It describes ugly behavior. But Antonin Scalia has pointed out that sodomy was a felony offense everywhere in the United States of America, everywhere on American soil for the first 255 years of our existence. Now, realize the same founders that crafted the Declaration of Independence and wrote the Constitution also crafted laws against homosexual behavior in their home states. Same legislators, same lawmakers went to Philadelphia, crafted the Declaration, went to Philadelphia, crafted the Constitution. Back in their home states, they crafted laws, the same lawmakers, against homosexual behavior. Thomas Jefferson, for instance, wrote himself. He himself wrote this law as a Virginia law that provided for castration as the punishment for the infamous crime against nature. And I've talked with you about this before. George Washington literally drummed two homosexuals out of the Continental Army when they were caught in flagrante delicto. Now, Massachusetts has a state law. We talked with Brian Kamiker last week about this. Massachusetts has a state law which has never been changed, and it defines homosexuality as, quote, the detestable and abominable sin. This is the Massachusetts state law. It's still on the books in Massachusetts. You could look it up. This law has never been changed. The law code of the state of Massachusetts today describes homosexuality as a detestable and abominable sin. So there is simply no objective basis whatsoever to claim that engaging in sodomy or entering into marriage based on sodomy is a right that is guaranteed in the Constitution. None. And this is true despite the absurdity of the Supreme Court's Lawrence decision. And realize just because the Supreme Court has issued a ruling does not make it right. You can ask Roger Taney all about that of the infamous Dred Scott decision. Now, the Constitution, in fact, is silent about marriage altogether. It doesn't say a word about marriage. Now, we know what this means according to the 9th and 10th Amendment. That is a power that is reserved to the states. The only role for the federal government when it comes to marriage is to decide what marriage is for federal purposes and to protect the 10th Amendment right of each state to decide marriage policy for itself. This is exactly what DOMA does. DOMA defines marriage for federal purposes. If you've got people working for the federal government and you want to give them spousal benefits, then you've got to define what a spouse is. It's right, perfectly right in the purview of the federal government to do that, and the federal government has done that. It has defined marriage for federal purposes as the union of one man and one woman, and it has said, look, no state can be compelled to change its marriage policy based on what another state does. That protects their 10th Amendment rights. So DOMA is a beautiful piece of legislation. Defines marriage for federal purposes and then protects the right of states to determine and craft marriage policy for themselves. Now, Bill Clinton, I mean, what he's doing here, it just makes your eyes water, the kind of acrobatic political gymnastics that he is going through here, because this is a bill, DOMA, that he himself signed into law. He even pointed this out, that only 81 or 82, there's 535 legislators in Congress, only 82, to my count, he said 81, but I think it's 82, only 82 out of 535 members of Congress voted against this. So it passed with overwhelmingly bipartisan majorities. And the only way this suddenly could become unconstitutional if the Constitution had changed since 1996, but it hasn't. It is exactly the same Constitution under which Bill Clinton signed it into law. It is as constitutional today as it was on the moment Bill Clinton signed it into law. So if there's even an ounce of constitutional allegiance left in the Supreme Court, DOMA will be upheld with dizzying speed. Now, George Washington, remember, said that religion and morality, and by religion he meant Christianity, by morality he meant the Ten Commandments. Religion and morality are indispensable supports of political prosperity. You can't have political prosperity without vibrant Christianity and the moral code of the Ten Commandments. So if the Supreme Court topples these two pillars by legitimizing marriage based on immoral, unnatural, and unhealthy behavior, America will have finally cut itself loose from its moorings to drift sea to sink to the bottom of the ocean.